Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for our joint committees on education and energy, economic development, and tourism, Wednesday, February 17th, 3 o'clock p.m. in room 229. This meeting, including the audio and video of remote participants, is being streamed live on YouTube. You will find links to viewing options for all Senate meetings on the live and on-demand video page of the legislature's website. This Zoom meeting and YouTube live stream event will include the 3 o'clock joint agenda for the Committee on Education and the Committee on Energy, Economic Development, and Tourism, the 3:05 joint agenda for the Committee on Education and the Committee on Agriculture and Environment, the 3:10 joint agenda for the Committee on Education and the Committee on Labor, Culture, and Arts, and the 3:15 p.m. agenda for the Committee on Education. In the unlikely event that we have to abruptly end this hearing due to major technical difficulties, the committee will reconvene to discuss any outstanding business on Friday, February 19th, 2021, and a public notice will be posted on the legislature's website. I'd like to take this time to remind our testifiers that due to time restrictions on our hearings, we will be limiting testimony to 1 minute per testifier per bill. For the people participating remotely, all testifier audio will be muted and video disabled until shortly before it is your turn to testify. When I call your name, staff will unmute you and your time will begin. After your minute is completed, staff will mute you so that we can move this hearing along in an orderly and efficient manner. Thank you. We have one item on this joint agenda, Senate Bill 516, relating to education, requires the State Board for Career and Technical Education to oversee and review annually statewide data collection processes and reporting requirements related to the student attainment of industry recognized credentials. Requires certain agencies to collect and report disaggregated data on students' attainment of industry recognized credentials. Requires certain agencies to pursue data sharing agreements with credentialing entities. Requires an annual report to the governor and the legislature. To testify, we have Terry Ushijima, Department of Education. Terry, please.
Good afternoon, Chair Kidani, Vice Chair Mikado Kim, Chair Wakai, and Vice Chair Mitsubishi. I'm Terry Ushijima, Interim Assistant Superintendent with the Department of Education, testifying on behalf of Superintendent Christina Kishimoto. The department supports the intent of Senate Bill 516, and we stand on our written testimony noting that resources will be needed to modify existing data collection systems to collect the information being requested in the bill. The department continues to be committed to strengthening and advancing a concerted effort among various partners to prepare students, including the attainment of industry-recognized credentials, to contribute to the vitality of Hawaii's workforce. I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, questions? If not, next testifier, Bernadette Howard, Director for University of Hawaii Career and Technical Education. Bernadette?
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. We have submitted our testimony. We are very much in favor of this bill. We just have a couple of qualifiers. First, we already do report to the governor, so doing this is not a big leap for us. What we are doing around the state is connecting data on everything related to career pathways, which includes the certificates and credentials and whatever, along with a lot of other data points. And we're doing it across all agencies, so we need a little more time to be able to get all of the work together and actually measure it and be able to report. So we're asking for another year before we report. We're asking to please check the data security language to make it stronger. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, members. Questions? Bernadette, I do have one question. Actually, could you please provide us some language that this bill needs to be strengthened as you testified to?
We'd be happy to do that.
Thank you. Next testifier, Keala Peters for Chamber of Commerce, Hawaii.
Hi, Senator. They're not present.
Thank you. They were in support. David Miyashiro testifying for Hawaii Kids Can. David?
Aloha chairs, vice chairs, and members of the committee. Hawaii Kids Can stands on our written testimony in strong support of SB 516. We wanted to also take a moment to highlight the Economic Policy Institute's research that the overall unemployment rate for young workers nationally, ages 16 to 24, jumped from 8.4% to 24.4% from spring 2019 to spring 2020. I think we all agree the margin of error for young workers in particular in our local economy moving forward will remain incredibly tight. SB 516 will give students a stronger chance moving into those challenging economic waters ahead. Mahalo for allowing me to testify.
Thank you, David. Members, questions? We have no further oral testimony. Members, do you have any questions for testifiers? Let's go into recess. Calling this joint meeting of the Committee on Education and the Committee on Economic Development and Tourism. Sorry, Glenn.
We're here.
The recommendation of the chairs is to pass this out with amendments, and the amendments would be as offered by the Attorney General's office, adding in a new subsection H in Section 2, protecting privacy and confidentiality of the data. Also, the amendments offered by OHA to disaggregate data for Native Hawaiians. Instead of saying Pacific Islanders, it's Native Hawaiians separate and Pacific Islanders. Strengthening the data security provisions in this bill that will be provided by University of Hawaii, and noting in the committee report that in order to implement the data collection and reporting, more time may be needed before the implementation as suggested by the University of Hawaii, Bernadette. So with those amendments, members, are there any questions? Your committee has questions? Members? If not, recommendation of the chair is to pass Senate Bill 516 with amendments. Chair votes aye.
Chair votes aye on Senate Bill 516. Vice Chair votes aye. Senator De La Cruz.
Aye.
Senator Kanuha.
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Aye.
5 members present, all voting affirmative. Recommendations adopted.
For the Committee on Energy, Economic Development, and Tourism, same recommendation to pass this measure with amendments. Any discussion? If not, Senator Misalucha, I vote yes.
For Senate Bill 516, for the Committee on Energy, Economic Development, and Tourism, Chair recommends pass with amendments. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Lee is excused. Senator Riviere is excused. And Senator Favela.
Aye.
Your recommendations adopted, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.
The next slide.
Thank you for joining us. This is the Joint Committee on Education and Committee on Agriculture and the Environment. We are here to deliberate on two bills. Senate Bill 1251 relating to the Hawaii Farm to School program authorizes the Department of Education to meet the local farm to school meal goal of 15% of food served in public schools to be locally sourced by 2025 and 30% by 2030. Here to testify, Randall Tanaka, Department of Education. Randy, please.
Hello, Senator, Chair Kidani, Vice Chair Kim, Senator Gabbard, and Senator Nishihara. Thank you very much for your time, and members of the committee. We stand by our testimony and the objectives to achieve the 15 and 30% local product in our school menus. I'm here to answer any questions if you have them. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Randy. Next to testify, Micah Munekata, Director of Government Affairs for Ulupono Initiative. Micah.
Good afternoon, Chair Kidani, Chair Gabbard, members of the committees. Micah Munekata here on behalf of the Ulupono Initiative. We stand on our testimony in strong support of this measure. We do request one small amendment regarding the measurement of the percentage of food, and it reads as measured by the percent of the total cost of food. Just to tighten up the language a little bit so that you know, when we move towards this goal that we actually have meaningful progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Micah. John Garibaldi, testifying for Local Food Coalition. John, please.
Aloha chairs, aloha vice chairs, members of the committees. My name is John Garibaldi on behalf of the Local Food Coalition. We stand in strong support on our written testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Next to testify, Lauren Zerbel, Executive Director, Hawaii Food Industry Association. Lauren, please.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Alexis Chapman for HFIA. We stand on our testimony in support, and I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to testify, Brian Miyamoto, Hawaii Farm Bureau. Brian, please.
Good afternoon, chairs, vice chairs, member of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. We'll stand on our written testimony in support of this measure.
Thank you. Next to testify, Eileen Nanny, an individual.
Hi, Senator. They're not present.
Thank you. In support. That is the last of our oral testimony. Members, are there any questions of any of the testifiers? Senator Gabbard, any questions?
Yes, I actually had a question for DOE for Randy.
Hello, Senator.
Yeah, Randy, in your mind, is the farm to school meal goals laid out in the bill achievable by DOE, or is this like pie in the sky?
Well, you know, it depends on the school and the location. I won't tell you it's going to be an easy task because it's a combination of price and product, right? And as tourism returns, the competition for the product will lean to who can pay the highest price, which is for the benefit of the farmer, which is a good thing, right? Then they can achieve the kind of economic prosperity they work so hard for. And we're going to see as we move towards the recovery of the economy. Right now, I would tell you it's a buyer's market because they have no outlet or limited outlet, but that's going to change. We're going to give it our best effort. We will report back to you on a regular basis on how we're achieving and where we are, and then have that robust discussion with all our partners. I mean, with Brian and Ulupono and all of the folks that are participants in this goal. We're all in this together. We understand the potential achievement for our local economy and for the health and welfare of our students and our children. So we're going to work hard at it. It's a good thing to do.
Mahalo, Randy. Mahalo, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Members, with no further questions, we'll go on to the next bill on this agenda. This is Senate Bill 1311 relating to sustainable schools, requires the Department of Education to establish food waste and zero-emission vehicle goals as part of the Sustainable Schools Initiative, requires annual reports to the legislature. To testify, Randy Tanaka, Department of Education, please.
Good afternoon, Chair Kidani, Chair Kim, Chair Gabbard, Chair Nishihara. Thank you for your time. Once again, our goals are the same, to achieve a better economy, reduction of our importation of oil. The DOE has a large number of solar panels on our roofs, and we should maximize that effort through electric vehicles. So we know that's a good thing. So we stand by our testimony and thank everyone for their hard work. Law.
Thank you. Next to testify, Christopher Yunker for Scott Glenn, Chief Energy Officer.
Hi, this is Chris Yunker for the Hawaii State Energy Office, and we stand on our written testimony providing comments. I will be available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. Next to testify, Micah Munikata, Ulupono Initiative.
Thank you, Chair. We stand on our testimony in support.
Thank you. That is the end of our oral testimony. Members, do we have any questions of the testifiers?
You have a question for Randy.
Senator Kim?
Question for Randy.
Hello, Senator Kim. Yes.
Hello. So Randy, on page, I guess page 4 and 5, it talks about the, oh, I'm sorry, are we on 1311?
Yes.
Yeah, 1311. About the assessment of the current transportation contracts and vehicle inventories for zero emissions. So you folks contract for the buses, right?
Yes, Senator, we do.
And so are they bus companies that have buses that have zero emissions?
A little history on that. When I first came aboard with the DOE, there was tremendous discussion about how we're going to transition from internal combustion engines to the electric environment. I will tell you that's going to take a little time because the bus companies have substantial investment in their equipment, and some of the equipment has a longer life cycle. And then it's the function of where do they dispose of these buses as they phase in the electric buses. The other concern they had was there's been some tests actually with JTB as a number of electric buses, and its capacity to climb some of these hills or where they're going had some challenges, but they've kind of addressed that. It will be a reach to convert all these buses within that cycle, and it's really the private sector, whether it be Roberts or Transpar or the folks we're dealing with now. And we need these buses, right? We transport a fair amount of students. We transport special ed, which is a federal requirement. So there's some challenges to get there. I'm sorry, I can't give you a clean answer right now. We're working through that process as we negotiate these bus contracts.
Oh, that was my concern, whether or not you can actually, I mean, you're complying with this is to give a report, but literally it's going to depend upon what's going on in the private sector, because until we can buy your own buses, which you're not going to be able to do, or probably not advisable to do, as to how soon that we can get to that zero emissions. To me, I'm not sure if it's going to be a process of one that's going to be, I don't know how fruitful it'll be. So anyway, I'm surprised you didn't bring that up.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, because they could exit the market if it's going to cost too much for them to meet our requirements. And what are we going to pay for these technically upgrades to the buses? It's going to be a tough one. And it's not only the buses, it's bus drivers. We have a declining workforce in that area. right? Because folks are retiring. So we're gonna have to see that challenge, but we're gonna work with the Hawaii State Energy Office and see what kind of opportunities we have and how we can get better at it. I would agree with you. It's gonna be a bit of a stretch, but we're gonna try.
Okay, well, I'm surprised you didn't bring that up in your testimony, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Gabbard, any questions from? Okay, let's go into recess. We are reconvening the committee meeting on education jointly with Committee on Agriculture and Environment in hearing the two bills. So Senate Bill 1251, the recommendation of Education Chair is to pass with amendments. The amendments are technical and non-substantive amendments. We will also be noting in the committee report that procurement exemptions may be required to effectuate the goals in this bill. Members, questions? Not. Senate Bill 1251 to pass with amendments. Chair votes aye.
Chair votes aye on Senate Bill 1251, pass with amendments. Vice Chair votes aye. Senator De La Cruz? Excused. Senator Kanuha?
Aye.
Senator Favela?
Aye.
4 members present voting in the affirmative. Senator De La Cruz? Aye, okay. 5 members present.
Thank you, members.
Adopted.
Chair Gabbard, your vote.
Same recommendation for AEN. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair Nishihara? Excused. Senator Ocasio?
Aye.
Senator Rhodes?
Aye.
Senator Favela?
Aye.
Measure passes. Thank you, members.
Thank you. For Senate Bill 1311 relating to sustainable schools, recommendation of the chair for education is to pass with amendments that are technical and non-substantive amendments. And also in the committee report, we will note the comments by Senator Kim relating to the requiring the reports that the Department of Education has little control over. With that, members' questions? Senate Bill 1311 passed with amendments. Chair votes aye.
Chair votes aye on Senate Bill 1311 with amendments. Vice Chair votes aye. Any members present voting in no? Any members voting with reservations? Hearing none, all 5 members present voting aye. Recommendations adopted.
Thank you. Chair Gabbard?
Same recommendation for AEN. Any discussion? Chair votes aye. Any opposition or reservations? Seeing none, note the absence of Senator Nishihara. Measure passes. Thank you, members.
Thank you. That concludes this joint hearing.
One.
Thank you for joining us for the Joint Committee on Education and Committee on Labor, Culture, and the Arts, Wednesday, February 17th. It's a little further than 3:10 p.m., but that's what the agenda was. I'm sorry for the lateness. We had 3 other hearings before this. To deliberate on Senate Bill 810 relating to collective bargaining, eliminates the superintendent of education as a voting member, constituting the public employer for the purpose of negotiating a collective bargaining agreement with personnel of the Department of Education. Let's see. To testify, Cynthia Covell, for Department of Education, please.
Good afternoon, Chairs Kadani, Taniguchi, Vice Chairs Mercado Kim, and Ihara, and committee members. I'm Cindy Covell, the Assistant Superintendent for Talent Management. The Hawaii State Department of Education respectfully opposes SB 810. eliminating the superintendent of education as a voting member in collective bargaining negotiations for Unit 5, our teachers, and Unit 6, our educational officers, could impede the department's ability and management rights to manage, direct, and control operations. Additionally, equipping the Board of Education with the majority of the votes would hinder the governor's ability to exercise broader authority and oversight responsibility for balancing the state's budget. Mahalo for the opportunity to testify and stand by to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Riker Water, Chief Negotiator, Office of Collective Bargaining. Riker, please.
Aloha Chairs, Kidani, Taniguchi, Vice Chairs, and members of the committee. Riker Wada, Chief Negotiator for the Office of Collective Bargaining. We echo the Department of Education's testimony and do note that this, as drafted, this measure would significantly diminish the governor's authority and ability to manage the Department of Education's expenditures. It would give the Board of Education the majority of votes by reducing the number of votes allocated to the governor. And allowing the Board of Education the ability to outvote the governor could negatively impact the governor's broader authority, oversight, and responsibility of balancing the state's budget and negotiating collective bargaining agreements for 14 other bargaining units. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Riker. That concludes the oral testimony. Members, open to questions, please. No questions from Education Committee. Senator Taniguchi? No questions.
None.
Yeah, I wanted to make a point, members, that, you know, when this collective bargaining agreement was drawn up, that the Board of Education were elected members and not appointed members. And I find it strange that the superintendent, who is overseen by the Board of Education, you know, could actually vote against the people that have hired her. So this is one of the reasons that I, you know, put together this bill. And I will say that in listening to the testimony, I am willing to consider an amendment that would actually leave the governor with the 3 votes and the Board of Education with the 2 votes, but just remove the superintendent. And
Replace her. Who would you recommend to replace her?
nothing, so it would just be 3 and 2.
That sounds good.
Because right now it's how many?
6.
Oh,
So if you remove the superintendent, it would be 5.
I'm okay with that.
You're okay with that, Senator?
Yes.
Any questions? Okay, so that's what the recommendation will be, and I will now go back into the hearing. We're ready to go back.
we never
left.
Oh, sorry.
Well, no, it's
No,
fine.
It's fine. That's
You can make the recommendation without
Yeah.
going to the break.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's good.
we don't need to go in recess, we just spilled our guts. Well, I did anyway. Okay, so the recommendation for Senate Bill 810 is to pass with amendments and amending the distribution of the votes to be 3 to the governor and 2 to the Board of Education, and removing the superintendent from the mix. Members, questions? If not, Senate Bill 810, recommendation of the Education Chair is to pass with amendments. Chair votes aye.
Chair votes aye on Senate Bill 810. Vice Chair will go with reservation. Senator De La Cruz?
Aye.
Senator Kanuha?
Aye.
Senator Favela?
Aye.
Okay, 5 members present, the recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Chair Taniguchi?
Yeah, same recommendation for the Committee on Labor, Culture, and the Arts. Senator Ihara?
For Labor Committee members, we're voting on the Chair's recommendation to pass Senate Bill 810 with amendments. Chair Taniguchi.
Aye.
Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Chang.
Aye.
Senator Keoho Kalole.
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Aye.
Recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. This concludes the hearing of the Joint Committee.
One.
Thank you for joining us. This is the meeting of the hearing of the Committee on Education, Wednesday, February 17th, scheduled for 3:15. We had 3 previous meetings, so pardon our tardiness. Starting with Senate Bill 270 relating to education, appropriates elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds, known as ESSER funds, monies received by the state from the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. Supplemental Appropriations Act 2021 to offset any budget reductions that are identified or proposed by the Department of Education and the governor that would result in the reduction of personnel who are subject to a collective bargaining agreement pursuant to Chapter 89 Hawaii Revised Statutes and who are employed at the school level, including any budget reduction that results in a layoff, furlough, or pay reduction, requires the Board of Education and Superintendent of Education to certify in writing that the Board of Education, Superintendent, and Department of Education agree to the conditions established by this act, including that the funds appropriated shall be used only for salaries and wages of officers and employees who are subject to a collective bargaining agreement and are employed at the school level, provides that monies from the appropriation shall lapse at the end of the fiscal biennium. That was a mouthful. To testify, Brian Hallett, Department of Education, please.
Aloha, Chair Kidani. It's actually Dr. Kishimoto.
Superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Kidani, Vice Chair Mikazo Kim, and members of the committee. The ESSA grant from the U.S. DOE is intended to address the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on our public education system. My recommendation to the Board of Education for these one-time funds is to provide solutions for unmet needs to close severe learning gaps, provide for health and safety measures to reopen schools, and offset critical shortfall areas. We agree school leaders, teachers, and staff are vital to an effective education system and believe these positions need to be secured through permanent funding, not one-time relief funds. This is why we've taken the $120 million give back from the governor in our base budget and allocated it back to schools to reduce their funding reductions to 0 in special education and down to 1% in WSF. Even with the give back, we simply do not have enough funds to run a quality public school system. I welcome the conversation around ensuring the predictability, reliability, and adequacy of funding for our schools that our students deserve. Mahalo.
Thank you. Corey Rosenly, Hawaii State Teachers Association.
Thank you, Chair Kidani, members of the Education Committee. HSA strongly supports SB 270. Currently, there are 1,300 employees, including 800 teachers, who have been informed that their positions have been eliminated. On top of that, DOE employees, including teachers, have been threatened with a 9.23% pay cut. This bill would appropriate federal funds to offset any budget reductions that would result in layoffs, furloughs, or pay reductions. Last night, I spoke to teachers from Kauai. In the last year, they have been threatened with 20% pay cuts. They were threatened with pay cuts right before Christmas, and now they're threatened with 9.23% pay cuts for the next 4 years. On top of that, they've been told they potentially could lose their jobs. Teachers across the state are stressed, and the sooner we act to allay those stresses would not only benefit our teachers, but also our keiki. Thank you.
Thank you. Sherry Nakamura, testifying for He'e Coalition.
Thank you. Aloha, Chair Kidani, Vice Chair Kim, and committee members. My name is Sherry Nakamura, Director of He'e Coalition. We are testifying in support of SB 270, proposed SD1. We agree that priority for our system should be on restoring positions at the school level and that the federal funds should be used to guarantee that these positions are maintained. To be even more specific, we think that personnel in the classroom, those who are closest to our students, should be the highest priority. Therefore, we suggest in our written testimony amending the language on page 4, lines 17 and 18 to read, and who are employed at the school level in the classroom. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Sherry. Susan Picola Davis. Susan?
Aloha, this is Susan Picola Davis, a community member. Aloha, Chair Kidani and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to humbly testify in support of this bill. I had earlier submitted a written testimony that I've had time to reflect on with a different perspective. We need to ensure the funding is going to protect layoffs, furloughs, or other such actions that at the end of the day affect our students. One example could be that my first grade student with special needs has been coming to school in person since the school opened. Then the student comes to school one day expecting to see her teacher from yesterday. And remember, this child is a special needs child, only in first grade. How do you explain to her that her teacher, since the first quarter, is not coming back? You have a new teacher now. Of course, this example fits any elementary school student in lower grades with whom the teacher has established rapport and trust.
Thank you, Susan. Members, that concludes our oral testimony. I don't think we need to go into recess.
What questions?
We have two more?
Yeah, plus questions.
I'm sorry.
Question.
You said we had two more testifiers?
No.
Oh.
He's too anxious.
I'm sorry. I need a breath.
You do.
Okay, members, questions on this bill?
Yeah, I have questions.
Senator Kim.
Superintendent, are you still here?
Yes, Senator.
Thank you. Superintendent, so currently now, I know you said that you said earlier, and you testified where the money goes. So what percentage of the monies are actually going to sustain the personnel and the teachers?
Do we have that percentage? 8%. Well, 1 second, Senator, if I may just check on that. Approximately 8%.
Only 8% goes for salaries?
Are you asking about the relief funds, or you're asking all budget?
No, I'm asking for the relief funds, because that's what this bill relates to, correct? It relates to...
Yeah, so this is related to the new relief funds.
Right.
It's more than that, Brian.
What did she say? It's more than that. No, 8%, she said. 8%.
Well, it's I'm gonna have CFO Hallett. I want to make sure I answer you correctly. I'm gonna have him jump on if that's okay, Senator.
Yes, because obviously...
I want to make sure I'm referring to the correct funds.
Well,
Hi, Senator Brian Hallett, CFO. The proposal submitted to the Board of Education for their consideration at tomorrow's Board of Education meeting. We have reflected in that proposal approximately $14.5 million out of the $183 million award received by the state, by the Department of Education out of the federal ESSER II funds. So that is approximately 8%.
so in section 2 of the bill, proposed language, it cites the sum of $104 million plus dollars as may be necessary for fiscal year, and the same sum to be identified by the department, the governor should result in the reduction of personnel who are subject to collective bargaining, and that the monies appropriated should not be expended for any other purposes. So, do I read that correctly, that all $104 million should go to salaries?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure of the breakdown because this has not been presented to the Board of Education yet, as far as I know.
That's each year for 2 years. 140.
I'm sorry?
So, Senator, the approach that we've taken is that the $123 million that the governor reinstated after he had cut 165 million. We've taken the 123 million and put that base funding, since that's general funding and permanent funding, back into schools, and we're using permanent funding to restore positions. This bill is referring only to the one-time federal funding, but we took the opposite approach. We're saying it's permanent funding that we're looking to put towards permanent positions. And we are having a conversation with the Board of Ed tomorrow about using the one-time funding, permanent funding for permanent position, one-time funding for the other expenditures we have that are primarily non-salary that we don't have sufficient funds for. So the food services costs that we have, we do have differentials included in that, and that is salary related. We also have in there the workers' compensation that we need to also pay again. So we have other non-specific classroom or non-salary expenditures that we're saying we want to use one-time funds again, so we want to put permanent funds against the permanent positions. We'll still have a shortfall of 141 or so million, and that's where we continue our request to the legislature to address that shortfall with permanent funds.
Okay, so what happens if this bill passes?
If the bill passes, then the Board of Ed would be looking at any bill that passes and what the implications are to the board. There's also, if the bill did not pass, but at the end of the session, there are not sufficient general fund budgets in the final budget bill, that the board would be going back to look at all temporary funds to make sure that we're protecting closest to the classroom.
So again, if this bill passes, you would have to take $104 million out of your general fund to make up for the monies that you took out of this COVID monies that was used for something else? I'm sorry, I'm not understanding how this works.
We're not expending against these one-time funds until there are some further decisions being made about what our final budget is.
Okay, so you still have these funds intact?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
They haven't been spent. And so according to
there's multiple moving parts, and we have to wait until we know what we have exactly to work with.
Okay, so according to this, the funds appropriated shall not be released or expended by the Department of Education unless the Board of Education, Superintendent of Education, certified in writing that the Board, Superintendent, and the Department agree to the conditions set forth. It shall only be used. So if the Board and the Superintendent don't agree, then what happens?
Well, no, the board and superintendent will always agree. I put proposals before the board. The board makes decisions, financial decisions, and directs me around those financial decisions. So I will implement what the board makes a decision
I understand,
on.
but if you guys don't agree with this, then what happens? That's my point. Not necessarily you don't agree with the board, but if you guys don't agree, then what happens?
So the board and I have discussed the fact that we are, as a strategy, asking the legislature to reinstate the base funding so that we can use permanent funding for permanent positions. We know that if that were not to occur, that we have to look at temporary funding, and then we'll be having this conversation come next session because it's only one-time funding for permanent positions, which is why we took the give back of the governor, which is the 123 million, which is base funding, permanent funding, and allocated that back to schools so that we have permanent funds against permanent positions. There's still a shortfall, so we're going to have to look at whether the legislature gives us additional dollars or whether we need to look at temporary funds.
Okay, thank you. I think I have a better understanding. Thank you.
Yes, and I think, Senator, also to note that there is a recommendation by the superintendent to not include the fringe that I think the last, 2010, when we had the same issue, that we also took out the fringe so that they won't have to be looking for that. So they are expecting $183 million from the ESSER funds. The governor thinks that there will be $123 million, according to the Council of Revenues. However, his budget had already passed over to the House before that announcement was made. And again, the presentation by the Department of Education has not yet been made to the board. That will happen tomorrow. So some of these things, as we will note in the recommendations for amendments, also will have to maybe be amended again in WAM.
Okay.
Okay, members, further questions? Okay, moving on to second agenda item, Senate Bill 76 SD1 relating to education, requires the Board of Education prioritize for the Superintendent of Education position candidates that have Superintendent of Education, that have the minimum qualification of 10 years of employment in the Department of Education with at least 5 of those years serving in the capacity as a principal or higher, and a desired qualification for a candidate is having a working understanding of the state's tri-level system of educational administration. To testify, no testimony. No testimony at all provided. Members, any questions on this bill?
Of nobody? I have a question for nobody.
Nobody may answer. Okay. Moving on, Senate Bill 757 relating to special purpose revenue bonds to assist Le Jardin Academy, authorizes the issuance of up to $25 million in special purpose revenue bonds to assist Le Jardin Academy. To testify, Corey Rosenly, HSTA. Corey?
Okay, thank you, Chair Kidani. HSTA opposes Senate Bill 757. We do not believe that public money should be used for private institutions. We know that within the current Hawaii DOE system that we have a lot of needs currently within just our public schools. The Jacobs report showed that we need $7 billion just for top priority projects.
This is a spur.
Yeah.
For additional classroom space to account for overcrowding and basic repair and maintenance. And that if we would take all of our needs is $11 billion. In 2019, the DOE requested $783 million of CIP projects. We're only able to approve, the legislature was only approved 281. We think this sets a dangerous precedent. If we start using public money to help private schools, I would ask you to not pass 757. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. There's no further testifiers. I think Senator Kim would like to define what a SPURB is to you, Corey. You might be misunderstanding what that is.
Yeah, there's no public monies that's been expended. It is basically them to get a SPURB so that they can take advantage of the interest rate that if I'm incorrect, please correct me, that they can take advantage of. So it's no state monies, and I believe we've done this in the past for
Yes.
others.
So we are not obligated and not using any state
Yeah,
funds.
they have
It's
to use their own
basically
monies.
to allow them to use the rate that the government uses to purchase bonds. Does that help you, Corey?
So the question I would ask at the end of the day is this, would any state funds be needed to either maintain a loan, pay the interest, or in any way would that hurt against the DOE CIP budget?
No, not at all. We have nothing to do. The state is not obligated at all to pay anything should Les Jardins not be able to pay their bill. It's between the lender and Les Jardins, and the only thing they do is use the government rate.
And again, they have to apply for it, and sometimes we grant this and they don't even apply for it, but, yeah.
Okay, thank you for the information.
Thank you, Corey. Members, that concludes the items on our agenda. Do we need to go into recess? Are you ready? Okay, so the recommendation of the chair is going to be to pass Senate Bill 270 regarding the ESSER funds, to pass with amendments. We'll insert the proposed SD1 language with the following amendments. On page 3, lines 1 and 2, delete the words "in that the state is not currently experiencing a precipitous decline in revenues." Also inserting a blank appropriation for fiscal year 2021. And also noting in the committee report that the Committee on Ways and Means may want to consider waiving the requirement for federal stabilization funds to pay fringe benefit costs to the Department of Budget and Finance. Also, there are technical and non-substantive amendments. Members, questions?
Madam Chair, not a question, but a discussion. I just want to put on the record that I did in fact speak with you regarding the possibility of including a part 2. The University of Hawaii had thought that something similar could apply to them, and as the title does not allow for higher ed, the title's not broad enough, that this wouldn't be a good vehicle for that. So just for the record.
Yes, you did. Thank you, Senator. With that, we are ready to vote on Senate Bill 270. Recommendation by the chair is to pass with amendments. Chair votes aye.
Chair votes aye on Senate Bill 270 with amendments. Is there any of the members from the committee voting reservations or voting no? Hearing none, we have all members present, all voting for affirmative. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. For Senate Bill 76 SD1, recommendation of the chair is to pass with amendments, and the amendments are technical and non-substantive in nature. Chair votes aye.
Okay, chair votes aye on Senate Bill 76 with amendments. Any member voting no, any member voting with reservations? Hearing none, all 5 members voting affirmatively, recommendations adopted.
Thank you. For Senate Bill 757, the SPURB, Special Revenue Purpose Bonds for Les Jardins Academy, recommendation of the chair is to pass as is. Chair votes aye.
Chair votes aye on Senate Bill 757 with no amendments as is. Any members voting no? Any members voting with reservations? Hearing none, all 5 members voting in the affirmative, recommendations adopted.
Thank you, and that concludes this hearing.